Hello, friends, and welcome to the Unshakeable People, a podcast where we shape minds and build leaders. In this episode today, we delve into the intricate interplay between balance, conflict, growth, and action, offering thought-provoking insights into the complexities of human development and the pursuit of harmony. My name is Katie Kaspari, and I'm your host. Stay tuned, as it will be hot. In the past couple of years, the word balance has become increasingly prevalent in our conversations. Why? Firstly, because many people are beginning to feel a lack of balance in their lives. And secondly, there was once a tradition of taking more than needed and discarding the excess. Previously, other principles were more dominant. Now, however, we find ourselves gravitating slowly towards the need for a balance. But what exactly is the essence of balance? It is important to understand that balance differs significantly from harmony. Gradually, balance is beginning to supplant harmony. This shift was my main message and my main goal for many years. I want to encourage people not to obsess over achieving absolute harmony in life. After all, attaining perfect harmony is nearly impossible, except maybe for those who have dedicated themselves to serious missionary work, like monks or hermits. Secondly, while harmony is beautiful, it is often a fleeting state, momentary at best. You can achieve a state of harmony, say, by meditating for up to 10 hours. However, this doesn't ensure that when you return to the real world, those 10 hours of meditation will be of any practical benefit to you. I have witnessed such instances on many occasions. For example, I once saw a young Dutchman who sat by the pool in the lotus position for nearly 10 hours. Despite this apparent dedication to harmony, he turned out to be quite the opposite. A swindler without any money who ingratiated himself with the wealth. He even attempted to charm my friend, hoping to spend a few nights with her. His intention was clearly to take advantage until he was inevitably rejected. Interestingly enough, he was a 45-year-old man with a very European, enlightened appearance. You could have found him trustworthy, and I guess he was. He looked, at least. That's what he looked, trustworthy. And indeed, my friend trusted him until I suggested that we promptly show him the door, fearing he'd overstay his welcome. Those 10 hours of meditation he did were genuine. It wasn't a facade, I could see it, as I can discern and detect when someone is truly meditating or not. Later, he confided in me, admitting his failures and how meditations seemed futile. I explained to him that meditation, much like harmony though, is a state where you are not actively doing or thinking anything. But with balance, it's different. You are both doing and thinking. Crucially, in balance, you must always keep moving. This is one of the most important things to know about balance. If you stand still, you'll fall. Everything in nature, including ourselves, is in perpetual motion. Every second there is a movement within us and throughout the universe. Energy, as defined in Einstein's formula, for example, is mass multiplied by the speed of light squared. This signifies a particle's transition from having mass to becoming a wave, existing everywhere, simultaneously, due to its incredible speed. Hence, balance is essentially movement, but not just any movement. It's a movement on unstable ground. Now, you could argue that today's world is unstable. Of course it's not. The instability of our world is increasing with each passing decade. This isn't mere stagnation. It's a kind of dynamic instability. We need not delve into examples, as the concept is quite clear. What we're witnessing could be described as progressive instability. Progressional instability is a curious concept that I have been studying for many years. It's like descending slowly, but through constant fluctuations. It's a situation where you're moving, always oscillating, yet still advancing and modernizing, right? And then there is this turbulent instability, which presents a totally different dynamic. Here, I offer you 3 distinct types of instability that we will discuss in more detail. Today's world is engulfed in turbulent instability, very similar to chaos. In this state, there are no straightforward linear relationships. Everything is non-linear and thus unpredictable. Navigating such a world requires a singular approach. Your only path is one of continuous movements, much like during an earthquake. In an earthquake, you're forced to balance without being able to predict the amplitude or direction of the seismic waves. It's more about catching your balance to avoid falling. For instance, imagine you are in your apartment during a seismic earthquake. You move swiftly to prevent anything from falling on you. If you are in a desert or on ice, you are unaware of where a crack might appear. In such moments, your focus isn't on the future, but it's on maintaining balance in the present, here and now, to avoid a fall. That's the essence of it. The chaos of today's world leads to turbulent instability. Your only recourse is to move with balance. To move in balance means you are not in a state of stability or tranquility. You're constantly swaying. But the key is in the counterbalance. As soon as you are pushed in one direction, to avoid falling, you instinctively push back in the opposite direction. And here, I'd like to give an example of my favorite snowboard. This is the sport that I have been doing for, 20 years now? But I still recall standing on this thing and I just couldn't go because I kept falling. I kept falling because I was afraid. And I was afraid because of the speed. What was interesting, as soon as I caught the speed and I got that fear out of myself, I found balance. I could stand on the board, I could stand on the sides, I could do curves because this very balance was holding me. Same on motorbikes. I ride a motorbike. I remember when I was learning to ride a motorbike, I was so scared. horrifying. And I just couldn't start catching up the speed. I was afraid to get going. And the slower I was, the less balance I had on my motorbike. The more chances I had to fall. Obviously, I had an instructor with me who was holding the backside of the motorbike so that I did not fall. But in any case, it was scary. Balance is all about counterbalance. As soon as you are pushed to the one side, you instinctively push back in the opposite direction. This is something that happens subconsciously. You don't think about that. This is your brain doing the thing that it thinks is most appropriate now. You're not meant to stand still by nature, as that would lead to a fall. Similarly, if you rush or move chaotically, you risk falling as well. The movement required here is akin to a wave, where you imitate its motion with small measured steps, high or the surface out there. This aligns with what the Eastern philosophers have often said. The journey begins with 1,000 small steps. What I'm describing here is akin to the movement of a tightrope walker. This person is constantly moving, constantly balancing, and steadily moving forward. However, they don't take large steps, as that would lead to a fall, unless they are an acrobat. At the same time, they cannot afford to stand still, because the longer they do, the more unstable they become. It's like riding a bike again. You achieve greater stability at higher speeds. Whether on water or on mountain, it's impossible to remain stationary on water skis. But as soon as you start moving, you maintain balance. Walking too is a form of balance. It's a constant cycle of catching balance for a moment, then losing it and taking a step. This concept of a balanced path of development, it isn't my original idea. It originated from the depths of philosophical thought. Friedrich Nietzsche was the first to present this imagery of a person walking on the tightrope of life. That's why I believe we need to shift our focus from harmony to balance. The state of thoughtlessness, steplessness, and motionlessness should be seen as a frozen wasteland, a rest, a pause, an attempt to escape the hustle and bustle of this life. It's normal to seek harmony. But when numerous people tell me that their ultimate goal is harmony, I always tell them, in this case, you must embrace death. Because death is the ultimate harmonization. Why? Because you emerged from energy and will eventually return to it. However, in life, there is no such thing as absolute harmony. The entirety of a person's life journey is marked by conflict. Nature's development and movement are products of conflict. The 4 seasons are a prime example of this conflict. A seed germinates, a tree grows from it, and then it eventually succumbs to decay. A butterfly emerges from a chrysalis, flies, and then its life ends. Every living substance is born, then it ages, and ultimately it dies. This cycle is an inherent part of nature. And conflicts is the crux of human development as well. Person can only evolve through conflict. I deeply believe that without conflict, economic development stalls. And therefore, all dreams of an ideal society are utopian in nature. Utopian, not in the sense of anti-utopia, but in the classical sense of utopia. This is because human development thrives under conditions of conflict. or to put it another way, under the conditions of competition. And this is something that we all experience every single day. In a state where everyone exists in absolute harmony, progress ceases. Therefore, there must be a conflict of ideas, an urge to explore new territories and ventures into other civilizations. It's no coincidence that modern films featuring superheroes like the Avengers, for example, depict them first resolving conflicts on Earth before taking on cosmic adversaries. These narratives reflect the innate human drive for conflict and exploration. This is absolutely natural to us. And indeed, without conflict, there is no action, no plot development. It's neither a film nor real life. Therefore, when someone says that their main dream is harmony, they are essentially dreaming of death. Harmony is not a goal. It's a form of rest, and this is how one should perceive it. The true aspiration should be to not fear conflicts, to understand the contradictions within them, and to resolve these contradictions. As soon as you resolve one contradiction, you achieve a goal, but only momentarily, because a new goal invariably brings a new conflict. Recognizing the balance and development under conflicting conditions is key. In this balance, there is conflict within which you seek your path, right? You don't just move in one direction, whatever this direction is, nor do you simply fall in another. Instead, you understand that the middle state is transient. Therefore, you need to take a new step to continue walking in balance. And what happens next? You might find a moment of peace, but it's quickly followed by a new conflict. This oscillation is how a person develops. It's essential to eliminate the fear of conflict, understanding instead that it's a natural state for the development of human thought, character, personality, and even the physical body, which is governed by the laws of the universe. Consider the example of an electron moving towards a proton. Two particles with opposing charges engaged in sort of struggle. Their collision is a conflict, and it has the potential to create something new. And life is no different. Conflict is inevitable because endless rest is a form of horror. It's unbearably dull. Remember how we all hated our isolation during the pandemic? Take the case of a person who has worked tirelessly all their life. Upon reaching retirement, they often don't know what to do with themselves, first and foremost. Before retirement, they might have been exhausted and yearning for a break. It's akin to a soldier who, accustomed to the rigors of battle, struggles to adjust to a peaceful, uneventful life. He struggles to adapt to a life of peace, having been accustomed to a more aggressive, dynamic lifestyle. There is a conflict that arises. So what now? Where should the fire of their personality and will, once channeled into their sport or favorite job or hobby, be directed? They have all this energy, but no outlet for it, because the level of intensity and tension experienced during their lives as athletes, as professionals, is hard to replicate in everyday life. That's why many people face difficulties post-retirement. It's often said that if you've led an intensive lifestyle, when you leave it, you need to replace it with something that offers a similar adrenaline rush or speed. It's about the journey, not seeking eternal peace. I've come to realization that's probably why, after stepping away from my corporate career, I've immersed myself in delivering lectures and coaching and working with people one-on-one. And I started to attend parties, often featuring electronic music, because this is something that I never had time for. And it struck me that this electronic music, it represents a form of movement as well. It's the unrest. This transition is an interesting conflict in itself. In electronic music and in classical music too, which is my favorite genre, there is a prevalent element of conflict. This isn't as common in pop music, whereas in classical, the conflict is an integral part of its essence. The dynamics in music, be it symphonies or electronic, often embody a sense of competition. In symphonies, it's the interplay of instruments and notes that creates a sense of rivalry inside. You listen to this music, you feel it. Electronic music, with its intense competition amongst sounds, particularly stands out of all other genres. The most impactful pieces are those that stir emotions, giving you goosebumps when you listen to a track. It's like witnessing one piece of music overtaking another in a harmonious battle. I've noticed that people derive special pleasure from dancing to these rhythms, and they sway, finding a balance between the lower, the middle, the higher frequencies. And in doing so, they navigate the conflict inherent in the music, shifting from one key to another. This conflict, this movement, energizes the entire room. If you go to a club, you just stand in the middle of the crowd and you would feel it. It makes everyone sway in unison. But it's crucial not to lean too far to one side or the other. This is where balance comes into play. And when there is a DJ, a really skilled, and he crafts a cool set, it thrives on these conflicts. His entire music is built on these conflicts. If the DJ shifts towards lower vibrations and stays there, it becomes monotonous, dull, and boring. On many occasions, I've been observing the crowd on parties and in clubs, and I got myself involved. And sometimes I even came up to the DJ, especially when I sensed that the set lacks some sufficient conflict in it, lacks the edge. I can see it, I can feel it, and so can the people in the crowd. So on that one occasion, I actually came up to the DJ in a club and I told him, "You're ready for it, just go for it." It's about creating that dynamic, that perfect imbalance that keeps the energy alive. And he did it, and it worked really well. People just got crazy. He pushed out one of the sides and it was so cool. Without conflict, there is no emotion, no inspiration. And inspiration, in many ways, is a facet of what we call will. It's like the flip side of willpower. You can't just switch on willpower just like that. It's not as simple as I want, therefore I do. If you lack inspiration, then it's about pushing yourself, right? If you don't want to do something naturally, you have to force yourself into it. It's like saying, I don't feel like it, but I'll do it anyway. That's stubbornness, a certain kind of determination. However, this alone won't sustain you for long. You need to shift energies to transform. But when you're inspired, that's when willpower comes into play. It's the will of a person that drives action when they are inspired. Inspiration is indeed a spiritual element, whereas will is deeply rooted in the tangible, material world. This dichotomy presents its own form of conflict. The challenge lies in how to bridge these two aspects: your existential, spiritual beginnings with the reality, your here and now. Many people are inspired by abstract ideas like karmic or tantric concepts, seeking partners who align with these profound notions. However, the critical question that I see here is what tangible actions are taken to realize these aspirations. It's one thing to immerse oneself in philosophical books and acquire knowledge, but that alone isn't equivalent to action. That remains in the realm of the spiritual. The key is to translate this spiritual inspiration into concrete, real-world actions. Inspiration is a spiritual phenomenon, while will is undeniably real and material, emerging from the tangible world. This contrast itself is a form of conflict. The question then comes, how do you connect these two aspects, your existential, spiritual beginnings with the concrete reality? How do you do that? Many people are drawn to abstract concepts like karma or tantra, desiring partners who resonate with these deep ideas. Yet when asked about the actions they take to manifest these desires, the response often involves non-material pursuits like reading books or studying philosophy. This isn't enough. It remains in the spiritual realm. You've absorbed knowledge, learned practices, and embraced others' wisdom. You've dreamed. Yet all this skews towards one side, the spiritual. You need conflict, an element of practical, real-world application. Try doing something small yet tangible, taking a risk in the real world, engaging in commerce. This idea mirrors the concepts presented by Marx in the first volume of Capital, which I admired for its exploration of contradiction and conflict inherent in commodities. Marx posited that commodities embody both labor and capital, which define their cost and also have the property to fulfill the desires of others, creating value. Without this conflict, you merely have a product, but not a commodity. A product becomes a commodity when it either wins in cost production or consumer value, when it fulfills a need for either the producer or the consumer. When conflict arises, a product emerges. Take the example of going to the market. You've invested your effort, you've invested your resources into this product, and now you wish to sell it. And the moment you attempt to sell, conflict is introduced. And this is progress. If you succeed in selling, the conflict is resolved. The product's value transitions to consumer value for someone else. The conflict resolves and your product becomes a commodity once again. The same principle applies to individuals. As long as you are inactive, you might possess potential value, but you haven't created a commodity. There is no conflict. And you must introduce that conflict. You must create it. Go to the market and attempt to sell your product. Go out there, show yourself. Then conflict arises and there is movement. And when there is movement within you, there is energy. And the energy comes, and with energy comes the energy of balance. a constant shifting back and forth. As soon as you've made the sale, the conflict dissipates. You receive money and there is peace, but only momentarily. Because the very next moment, you are faced with the need to produce and sell again, and then again, again. And this process illustrates Hegel's dialectics, a framework of continuous movement and development. It raises the question of why so many people are currently immersed in the pursuit of knowledge without tangible outcomes. Everyone seems to be reading remarkable books, listening to lectures, podcasts on YouTube, yet there is little evidence of significant personal change. In the evolution of any society, there is typically an initial stage focused on the market. This stage involves the initial accumulation of capital. We're experiencing this phase right now. Certain individuals become wealthier. They then ponder where to invest their accumulated wealth. Following this phase of capital accumulation, where people are willing to do almost anything for financial gain, often setting aside their education and principles, there comes a time for reflection and redirection of these resources. And this is exactly what we're witnessing today. In this phase, people tend to forget everything else as the market economy starts to evolve, swinging back and forth in a more expansive motion. Following the development of the market, we enter the era of consumption. Initially, this consumption is primitive and showy. Recall the era of red jackets in the Soviet Union, a symbol of the first wave of new wealth in the 90s. During this period, status was often flaunted through material possessions like luxury cars and designer ties. There were jokes about buying something for $1, then finding something else who'd buy it for 10. It was all about conspicuous consumerism, a sort of aggressive, primitive display of wealth. Gradually, this overt consumerism began to wane. While the exceptionally wealthy may still indulge, for the average person, such as blatant materialism has become unfashionable. The phase of initial excessive consumption has now transitioned into a more modern form. There's been a shift towards a different kind of consumption, the consumption of knowledge. We're currently experiencing a phase of original, somewhat excessive and frenzied consumption of knowledge. The focus isn't on material possessions, like jackets, car brands, or big Birkin bags, or whatever else. Now, today, it's about what you know, what's in your head. This trend now extends to believing in expertise acquired not through direct experience, but through online learning. It's like saying, my cheesecakes are the best because I completed an online course on how to make them. Or my gingerbread cookies are unmatched because I learned from a digital class. It goes as far as career shifts, where someone might say, I used to be a bank clerk, but now, thanks to these courses, I consider myself a super psychologist. It's a new form of consumption and status, consuming and showcasing knowledge. This phenomenon illustrates a current trend where people equate taking courses with becoming an expert. It's a mindset where someone might say, yes, I have completed these courses and now I have an intense desire to heal and educate others. I'm now a super coach. Why? Because I took these courses. They might claim expertise in understanding complex psychological concepts like personality conflicts and groups, or the nuances of the collective unconscious versus individual consciousness. It's an initial phase of consuming knowledge, but is there inspiration? Certainly, there is a drive to teach others, to amass knowledge, and to be recognized as an authority online. The goal isn't necessarily to create something new, but to amass followers, to replicate and share what they've learned, and about copying and disseminating acquired knowledge rather than applying it practically. This trend reflects a pattern where individuals mimic successful figures hoping to replicate their success. For instance, some influencer on Instagram gives interviews and offers advice. I'll do the same. Another influencer on Instagram dances. I'll dance too. Another influencer showcases certain things. I'll showcase similar things. If there is a content about family and children and it's becoming popular, I'll produce content on the same topic. This strategy is to latch onto various trends, hoping to capture a wide audience and gain millions of subscribers. This is what many people dream about today. It represents an agitated initial phase of knowledge consumption where the goal isn't to develop a unique product or service, but to rather quickly absorb information and monetize it without encountering real conflict. This rush to capitalize on trends without genuine engagement or innovation, it is what's commonly referred to as hype. The conflict here is absent because the knowledge consumed remains largely in the spiritual or theoretical realm, without being tested or applied in a challenging real-world context. Now let's imagine a scenario where this inspiration translates into action. You're no longer just absorbing information. You are cranking up the volume and creating a tangible product. This is about offering something real, something of value to people. You're taking a risk. If this product is well received and you're compensated for it, it's not because you imitated someone else's idea, but because you innovated, crafting something unique that hasn't been done before. People got interested. People got involved. In this moment, the conflict is resolved, and you've provided a real service. You become a leader in your field, ready and willing to forge ahead. This is what it means to embody the spirit of a philosophist, a term that I feel very much related to. It's about understanding and navigating the triad of predators, herbivores, and others, a concept we haven't yet explored on platforms like YouTube. Indeed, the concept of conflict is central to our today's discussion in this episode. As I often say, energy is born from the collision of opposite phenomena. This is the heart of my philosophy in the Unshakeable Club programs. It is a methodology that emphasizes simplicity in understanding complex ideas. In my Unshakeable People philosophy, the small is seen within the vast, and the vast within the small. When examining people's psychotypes, their mentality and character, we can identify significant elements of movement and conflict within each other. This perspective allows for a broad yet simplified view of people. It categorizes individuals into distinct groups: predators, herbivores, and what might be considered a third, undefined category. This framework is a way of generalizing and simplifying the complex nature of human behavior and interactions. The energy of each individual, as per this philosophy, arises from their inherent conflicts. For herbivores, their conflict stems from their dietary choices and survival instincts. For instance, those who identify as vegetarians or vegans may pride themselves on not exhibiting blood or aggression. aligning with the perception of being on the side of good. The conflict for herbivores, in a metaphorical sense, of course, is that while they consume plants, which are perceived as harmless and peaceful, they themselves become targets for predators. This creates a constant state of vigilance and fear, as herbivores lack the physical defenses that predators possess. Their only recourse is flight. Consequently, there is always an underlying fear of being preyed upon, keeping them in a state of readiness to flee. This perpetual sense of vulnerability and the need to alertness is the core of their conflict. While they are seen as noble creatures for not consuming other animals, they live in a constant state of fear and readiness to flee. This duality, nobility versus vulnerability, forms the core of their conflict. They must always stay alert and find safe places to feed where predators are scarce. Their survival strategy is not aggression, but avoidance, except in rare cases where desperation drives them to confront predators with whatever defensive means they possess, like horns. Turning to predators, their conflict is to a different nature. Predators are often perceived as aggressive and dominant, but this comes with its own set of challenges. They must constantly hunt and compete for food, which requires strength, strategy, and sometimes cooperation with others of their kind. Their existence is defined by the pursuit and capture of prey, which can be physically demanding and dangerous. Moreover, being a predator often involves territorial disputes and maintaining dominance, which adds another layer of conflict. In essence, the life of a predator is characterized by constant competition, both in securing food and in asserting dominance within their own social hierarchies. The conflict for predators lies in the nature of their energy and action. Predators are equipped to attack rather than retreat. This is their primary response, and it is aggression. However, the conflict arises from the limitation of their energy and the short-term nature of their movements. A predator can't sustain a chase for an extended period of time. They need to conserve energy, often requiring long periods of rest. And this is why, for example, lionesses spend a considerable amount of time sleeping after hunt. They need to recuperate from the exertion, despite being at the top of their food chain. The males, while guarding, may also go hungry if they don't successfully hunt. If a predator overexerts itself, it risks exhaustion and even collapse, like a heart attack in the metaphorical sense. The lesson for people here is that while you may possess great power or resources, these are not infinite. It's crucial to recognize the limits of your strength and to use your resources wisely. If you continuously exert yourself without rest or strategic planning, you risk depleting your energy and jeopardizing your position or well-being. Therefore, understanding and managing your capabilities and limits, much like a predator, is essential for sustained success and survival. The scoundrels, as I refer to them, encompass scavengers like hyenas and vultures. These scavengers indeed face their own unique set of conflicts. Unlike predators, they don't expend a significant amount of energy chasing prey. Instead, what they do is they rely on the leftovers from other animals' hunts or on animals that have died from other causes. Hyenas, for instance, often scavenge meals collectively, taking advantage of leftovers or even stealing kills Vultures, with their keen eyesight, soar high in the sky, spotting carrion from the great distance before swooping down the feed. An interesting dynamic exists between vultures and hyenas, particularly in regions like Africa, where they often compete over the same carcasses. Vultures, despite their ability to handle themselves against hyenas in certain situations, often cede ground when outnumbered. The primary conflict for scavengers in their dependency on other animals' actions. If there are no kills or natural death in their vicinity, they face the challenge of finding food. This can lead to them expending significant energy in their search. Vultures, for example, may have to fly long distances, covering vast areas to locate food. Their survival hinges on the availability of carrion, making them inherently reliant on the ecosystem's dynamics and the activities of other animals. In life, some people adopt strategies akin to those of scavengers. The example of individuals seeking to ingratiate themselves with wealthy or influential figures. This approach involves spending time and energy to build trust and get close to someone who has access to resources, typically money, they didn't personally earn. The strategy is to attach oneself to these individuals and benefit from their wealth. This process involves its own form of conflict. On the one hand, it seems easier because these people are not building their own wealth or resources. But on the other hand, it requires significant, often grueling effort, a sort of psychological and emotional labor. The situation resembles themes in the classical novel An American Tragedy, where characters engage in actions they find distasteful or humiliating to gain proximity to wealth and power. However, this path is fraught with risks. The precautious nature of such relationships means that they can collapse at any moment, potentially backfiring on the individual who sought to benefit from them. This illustrates how all roles, be they predators, scavengers, or herbivores, operate within a realm of conflict. Interestingly enough, these roles are not static. A predator, when exhausted or defeated, might take on scavenging behaviors. Conversely, a scavenger, when cornered or desperate, may exhibit predatory aggression. A herbivore, driven to the brink, might lash out in a predatory manner. Although such transformations are rare, very rare. These shifts highlight the fluidity of roles and strategies for survival and success in both the animal kingdom and our human society. Such dynamics underscores the complex and often conflicting values inherent in different survival strategies, whether in the animal kingdom or human society. The transitions between roles like predator, scavenger, and herbivore are frequently driven by circumstances, signifying not just movement, but also the resolution of conflicts. Someone might grow weary of the constant vigilance and aggression required as a predator and yearn for a more peaceful, herbivorous existence. Conversely, a herbivore might tire of constantly fleeing and opt to take charge, becoming more predatory. These shifts are not about morality. They are about natural instincts and survival. It's a mistake to categorize behaviors within the food chain as inherently good or bad. Hyenas, often vilified, play an essential role in their ecosystem, just like every other creature. In human society, the need for diverse roles is similarly evident. Scoundrels, predators, and herbivores all have their place, contributing in different ways. It's humorous, yet telling how, when asked to self-identify, most people choose to label themselves as predators, overlooking or denying the possibility of being scavengers. Admitting to being a scavenger, to leveraging others' resources for one's benefit, can be seen as a form of honesty or charisma. It's about recognizing and embracing one's role in the broader scheme of things. This acknowledgement doesn't just reflect self-awareness. It can also be a powerful tool for understanding and navigating the complexities of human interactions and societal structures. The idea that a person might exhibit traits of all three roles, predator, scavenger, and herbivore, depending on the circumstances, is an intriguing one. However, it's essential for an individual to have a dominant mode or a primary path that guides their actions and decisions. This dominant mode is like a highway that shapes the direction and integrity of a person's journey. Being pulled in multiple directions and trying to integrate these diverse aspects can indeed be a conflict in itself. It requires a clear understanding of one's values and goals. If a person decides to create and innovate, taking risks, they are exhibiting predator-like traits. They're not just dreaming, they are actively realizing their inspiration and willpower. On the other hand, if a person prefers to work within the established system, like a corporation, for example, without taking significant risks, their approach is more herbivorous. They operate within the safety of defined structures, their movements and decisions influenced by the rewards and security provided by these systems. Therefore, while individuals might display characteristics of different roles in various situations, usually one role predominates, reflecting their core values and approach to life. This primary role forms the strategic path they follow, influencing how they interact with the world and how they make decisions. It's about finding a balance between these different aspects while staying true to one's predominant nature. This analysis that we've done throughout the episode so far touches on the distinction between passive consumption and active engagement, particularly in the context of seeking energy and fulfillment. The trend that we see a lot nowadays, where people suddenly realize they are lacking energy, could indeed be linked to what may be termed the era of the original consumption of knowledge. In this era, people consume information, experiences, insights, but this consumption is often superficial and doesn't necessarily translate into meaningful, energizing experiences that last. The tourist traveler, for example. A tourist may visit numerous places, like all over the world, take countless photos, and see all the famous sights, yet their experience is often shallow. They follow a set path, see what everybody else sees, but don't engage deeply with the environment. They haven't got lost in the streets of Europe, a metaphor for immersing oneself in an experience without a predetermined path or expectation. This lack of deeper, spontaneous, and challenging experiences means there is no significant personal growth or internal conflict to overcome, which can be energizing. In contrast, a traveler who faces real challenges like surviving in the desert under harsh conditions, undergoes a transformative experience. Such experiences are not just about seeing new places, but about confronting and overcoming challenges, leading to personal growth and a sense of accomplishment. This active engagement, facing and resolving conflicts, is what brings energy and vitality. It's about stepping out of the comfort zone, which is where real growth and energy lie. This highlights a critical distinction between passive consumption and active experimental learning. The lack of energy in people who merely consume knowledge or experiences without deeper engagement mirrors societal trend. This search for energy has led people to seek external solutions, like courses that promise to teach them how to be energetic, or retreats led by so-called shamans. However, your experience in harsh conditions, like being on an island or in a trip that went not so good, or traveling a lot without basic amenities, had lasting impact because it was a direct, challenging experience. It would not be about consuming knowledge or following a prescribed path. It would be about enduring and overcoming real-life challenges. Such experiences can leave a lasting impression and provide a sense of energy and achievement that mere consumption cannot match. The pursuit of quick fixes for energy, whether through courses or retreats, can indeed be seen as a form of human folly. It reflects a desire for easy solutions to deeper issues of engagement and fulfillment. The irony here is that the very act of seeking energy through passive consumption, whether of knowledge or experiences, it doesn't matter, can lead to a further depletion of energy, as it lacks the transformative power of genuine, challenging experiences. And as to the absence of courses on certain life skills like writing, the lack of such courses might reflect a general reluctance to engage deeply and energetically with challenging tasks. People often seek easy, structured paths to improvement, rather than embracing the often messy and demanding and difficult process of self-driven learning and growth. This reluctance might be a part of the broader trend where the search for energy and fulfillment is externalized rather than found within oneself through genuine effort and experience. The evolution of money reflects a fascinating journey through history, beginning with primitive forms of trade and evolving into the complex financial systems which we have today. Initially, people traded goods directly, using items like bags or salt or pieces of gold as a medium of exchange. This practice evolved into the use of metal coins, which offered convenience and standardized value. And as societies developed, paper money emerged, following by the widespread adoption of the dollar as a dominant global currency. Now, we're witnessing the rise of digital currencies, making the latest chapter in the history of money. Karl Marx's analysis of economic systems highlighted the transition from simple barter, exchanging goods like boots for shirts, to a more complex market economy. With the advent of markets, the formula shifted to money, goods, money, the MGM, symbolizing the capitalist system where capital is invested to generate more capital through production. In this system, money transcends its role as a mere medium of exchange. It becomes a means of payment and a tool for accumulating wealth. However, Throughout its various forms and functions, money consistently remains a means to an end, facilitating transactions and representing value in economic activities. The concept of energy in products is intricately tied to human effort and potential. When energy is invested in creating a product, it imbues that product with value. However, if someone attempts to gain money dishonestly, such as through deceitful schemes like a lie marathon online or some false courses or false products online, the endeavor lacks genuine energy. It's essentially a short-lived and unethical exploitation, detrimental to everybody involved, those who are deceived and pay, as well as those who seek to establish themselves in the market through such means. This perspective aligns with the natural laws of energy and motion, which also encompass aspects of human morality and ethics. People who act immorally or unethically may exhibit temporary bursts of energy, but they lack deep, sustainable energy. For example, consider Adolf Hitler. His energy was more of a hysterical nature, driven by ego and self-interest, rather than a deep, constructive force. His ideas and actions, driven by a schizoid, hysterical energy, were fundamentally destructive. In contrast, figures like Franklin Roosevelt demonstrated a different kind of energy, one that was geared towards creation and positive transformation without seeking personal gain. This deep energy contributes to building and improving worlds, showing a stark contrast to the self-centered and destructive energy of individuals like Hitler. It underscores the importance of ethical and moral considerations in the use and manifestations of human energy. Roosevelt's leadership during the Great Depression, despite his disability, exemplifies the concept of deep energy. It was an energy rooted in resilience, vision, and a commitment. And the message here is clear. If one seeks energy, they should look within themselves. If it isn't found, it indicates a lack of self-understanding. The journey isn't about finding the best or worst version of oneself, but rather the truest version of oneself. This notion counters the popular mantra of seeking the best version. Before aspiring to be the best, one must first understand their fundamental nature, their core self. This process of self-discovery is crucial for unearthing one's intrinsic energy. It's simpler and more effective to understand and work with what genuinely resonates with your identity. It's similar to analyzing a mathematical model. Before determining its efficacy, one must first understand the model itself. Only then can you align it with the desired outcomes. Regarding the first step in starting a conversation with oneself and understanding one's true self, it begins with introspection. And this involves stepping back from external distractions like gadgets and devices that often consume our attention. The pervasive dependency on gadgets reflects a broader societal trend of seeking external stimulation, which often hinders deep self-reflection. To truly understand oneself, it's essential to disengage from these distractions and look inward, examining one's thoughts, feelings, values, and motivations. This introspective process is the foundation for understanding oneself. and unlocking the intrinsic energy that lies within each and every one of us. The fear of being alone with one's thoughts, common experience in today's society, often leads people to seek constant engagement with external distractions like social media or YouTube. This avoidance is a defense mechanism against introspection and self-confrontation. The first step in the process is creating a space for introspection. This involves turning off your phone, computer, and other devices and seeking a quiet, undisturbed environment. Being in complete silence, perhaps even in darkness, can help focus the mind and reduce external stimuli. This setting fosters a conducive atmosphere for deep thought and self-reflection. Once in this space, you can really start to explore yourself. This exploration might involve asking fundamental questions about your desires, fears, motivations, and values, understanding whether you align more with the characteristics of a predator, of a herbivore, or scavenger, in a metaphorical sense, of course. And this can be a significant step. It's about identifying your natural tendencies, your strengths and your weaknesses. And the key is to approach this process with honesty and openness, without fear or judgment. Don't lie to yourself. Be honest. It's not about labeling yourself, but it is about understanding your nature and how it influences your interactions with the world. Through such understanding, you can start to harness and cultivate your intrinsic energy, leading to a more authentic and fulfilling life. This introspective is not always comfortable. This journey is not always comfortable. It's not a safe ride. It's not a soft ride. But it's essential for genuine self-awareness and growth. It's about facing yourself head on, embracing all aspects of your identity, and using that knowledge to navigate life more effectively. When you start thinking about meaningful actions, what you can do for others, while also experiencing personal fulfillment, you effectively combine willpower with passion. It's in this harmony of doing for others and for oneself that the awakened dragon, your inner strength, finds its true purpose and expression. The idea of the flight of the dragon resonates with me as a metaphor for unleashing one's inner potential and strength. I often wonder, can a person change their energy level and increase it? Personally, I feel that my energy has evolved over time, influenced by my experiences and efforts. What we are born with from nature is not necessarily the limit of our potential, a concept discussed by Eastern philosophers for centuries. It suggests that our bodies and our minds have untapped potentials, which can be accessed and developed through practices like yoga and meditation, contradicting the idea that we're strictly limited by our natural endowment. Our current lifestyle and psychological makeup might not yet be fully adapted to long lifespans. Yet, the Japanese provide an intriguing example. Their diet, rich in raw fish consumed in many countries, is noteworthy. The Japanese cultural approach is fascinating. They are careful never to say anything that could offend someone, effectively conserving energy in social interactions. This behavior contrasts with more intense forms of energy cultivation, like deep meditation or merging with nature. These traditional practices, akin to an ancient language, involve entering a state of vent, where one can really look into additional energy, tap into additional energy, lose oneself, and become one with nature in this state, and don't exist as an individual, but become part of the larger natural world. A cloud, grass, a wave, or a droplet of water. This concept is similar to what Indians call samadhi, a profound state of meditation. Even a brief experience of samadhi, lasting just a couple of seconds, can be incredibly rejuvenating, providing a sense of renewed energy and perspective. Entering a state of deep meditation or samadhi, even when utterly exhausted, can result in a profound transformation in just moments. Emerging from this state, one might feel rejuvenated, as if they have grown wings. This phenomenon could be attributed to the placebo effect, as some might argue. But for me, the origins of this rejuvenation is less important than its effectiveness. It's another form of evidence that energy can indeed be generating from within, independent of our natural reserves. Reflecting on this idea and the book that I have recently learned, which is called Ego is an Enemy, I find myself questioning this concept. Is the ego truly an adversary? In my point of view, it's not. History is replete with examples of great figures, from Leonardo da Vinci to Steve Jobs, Napoleon, Stalin, Roosevelt, Peter the Great, who were driven by their egos. Their egos were not solely negative or positive forces, but rather they were instruments of personal identification and achievement. The ego, in my perspective, is crucial for personal identification. It encompasses one's sense of self and the pursuit of personal interests. To equate the ego solely with negative attributes, it overlooks its role in motivation and self-realization. It's about balancing the ego, ensuring it doesn't become destructive. When managed correctly, the ego can be a powerful ally in achieving one's goals and contributing positively to the world. I often link my ego to a predator, force that can potentially consume everything around it if left unchecked. It reminds me of a wolf, wild and untamable, unlike a domesticated dog. An untamed ego has the potential to be destructive, both to myself and to those around me. In contrast, I view a positive ego as akin to a horse, a force that can be harnessed and ridden. It represents a balanced state where I'm not entirely submissive, losing myself in the egos of others. Instead, I maintain my individuality and personal power. An unchecked ego can lead to a life controlled by others, where one's existence revolves solely around serving and pleasing those around them. Even in such endless service, the ego manifests itself, perhaps as a liking for the role of the sacrificial, subservient person. However, the ego, much like a horse, can be controlled and directed. I can push it forward when needed or rein it in during moments of impulse. It allows me to make considered decisions, like stepping back when necessary or softening my approach to harmonize with others, especially in family or my close relationships. This approach to understanding and managing the ego enables me to adapt to different circumstances without losing my sense of self. It's a delicate balance of asserting my own needs and desires while also being mindful and considerate of others. Ultimately, there comes a time when you can release the reins of your ego, allowing it the freedom to express itself fully and authentically. The ego is complex and multi-faced, like a spectrum with more than 50 shades. It doesn't require rigid systematization. As an individual, especially if you're introspective and self-aware, it's essential to listen attentively to yourself. This deep listening helps you understand the various shades and nuances of your ego at play. Recognizing and acknowledging the different aspects of your ego is a journey of self-discovery. It involves exploring the diverse facets of your personality and how they manifest in your thoughts, in your feelings, and in your actions. By understanding the diverse colors of your ego, you gain insight into your true self, enabling you to navigate life with greater awareness and authenticity. This would be the end of today's discussion and today's episode. I hope you have enjoyed it, and if you have, please don't forget to subscribe and visit me again whenever you feel like it. I will be with you every single week, and for now, bye.